Artlist.io.
Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Sustainachella. We're so excited to have you.
Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sustainachella. We're so excited for you all to join us as we relaunch our Sustainachella workshop series. And today we'll be diving into waste minimization and diversion. And so as you're joining it our workshop, please feel free to introduce yourselves and let us know, do you already recycle or compost? Let us know in the chat, and we'll get started in a few seconds. All right. Again, everybody, welcome to Sustainachella. My name is Elisa Berthemu. I'm the Senior Sustainability Coordinator with the city and Acting Sustainability Manager. And I'm so excited to welcome you to our Sustainachella series that is being relaunched, and for the amazing speakers we have today for our waste minimization workshop. I'm now going to pass it over to Rolando, who will introduce himself and take the presentation from here.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be a part of the presentation. My name is Rolando Martinez. I am the new sustainability specialist with the city. I've been with the city for about 4 months now, and I'm just so excited to be a part of the Sustainachella web series. Today, we just want to go over a few of our house rules. So while on Zoom, you're going to notice that all the participants are going to be muted and that the videos are going to be turned off. This is just to avoid any sort of issue with people that might be looking to start some trouble and might be doing some Zoom bombings. So we don't want to do that. And our next thing that we want to talk about is, if you have a question, please make sure to include it in the Q&A box, just so that we're able to track the questions and answer as many as we can. And we do also ask that in the chat, if you're sharing some comments, to share it with everyone and make sure that you're sending it to everyone, or that you have the all panelists and attendees settings as well. Today, our friends are going to be presenting are Shiraz Kashar with Waste Management. He's the Community and Outreach and Education Specialist. And we have Ricky Bonima with the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, who works with horticulture and beekeeping. So to start our presentation, we're going to have Shiraz going first and giving a little bit more information about himself.
Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here. I guess this is like the 6th or 7th year we've been, I've been part of this, and I think it's very good for the residents, especially the ones that are learning about recycling or just need a, just a what do you call it?
A quick refresher.
A quick refresher. Thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shiraz Kashar. I'm with Waste Management. I'm on the outreach and education side. Anytime municipalities need someone to come out and do a presentation on recycling or garbage and just make the residents understand how the system works, this is where I come in. So, I've been in the waste industry for over 15 years. Either running programs, setting up recycling programs or waste minimization programs, or just educating the community on recycling. And it's always good to understand what can and can't be recycled, right? Especially now where there's a lot of material out there, where we live in a post-COVID world. People still want to know what type of material can and can't be recycled, especially with people's consumer habits that have changed after COVID. So we'll get into all of that. Okay, Rolando, next slide. So, you know, one thing that I want everyone to understand is that you see that chasing arrow that you see in front of you. This is called, a lot of people know this as the recycling symbol. In science and engineering, this symbol is called the Mobius Loop. And really, when it was first created, the reason why this symbol was created was to let other plastics engineers know what type of plastic the material that's in their hand is made of, what resin. And it goes all the way from 1 to 7, there's an 8 and 9, and we'll talk briefly about that in just a moment. But I want everyone to understand that just because you see that symbol, it does not mean you can recycle the item. So, and that's what this presentation is for, just to clarify what can and can't be recycled, especially when it comes to plastic. You know, a lot of the times they use this recycling symbol that you see in front of you for marketing purposes, okay? And also, this is, keep in mind that in Miami-Dade and Broward, largely they do single stream recycling programs. That means you don't have to separate anything at your house or business. When it's collected, it's all one single stream that's collected. And when it comes to our recycling facility, it gets sorted and separated. The machines do all the work, okay? Next slide, Rolando. So moving forward, I want everyone to understand that after doing this presentation for many, many years, I've simplified this presentation with just pictures, okay? And I'll give you the explanation of why things can be recycled or why they can't. All right, so everything moving forward as it stands now are acceptable items in your recycling program. Next slide. All right, number one, after, you know, certainly after the past 2 years of a lot of people are working remotely or staying at home, you know, people order their things from Amazon or other e-commerce sites. And when they come in boxes, depending on the size of the item, cardboard boxes like the ones you see in front of you can be recycled and should be recycled. Make sure they're flattened. If they have tape on them, that's fine. The labels are fine. Just make sure they're empty, flatten them, put them in your recycling. Okay, next slide. Also, when it comes to paper material like cardboard, this is another type of cardboard. It's actually called chipboard. Cereal boxes, cookies, crackers. These are the items that is acceptable. Now, when you have a cereal box, make sure the plastic is taken out, thrown away, flatten the box, put it in your recycling. Next slide. Newspapers and magazines. You know, from what I understand, what I gathered after talking to people, a lot of people don't really get subscription to the newspaper. Maybe they may get like catalogs or magazines, but if you still get this, these are perfectly good items. Put them in your recycling bin. Next slide. And you also have mail, especially during the holiday season or during an election year. You're going to get tons of information being sent to you in the mailbox. You can put all of that in the recycling, including the envelopes with the window, the cellophane window. That's not a problem. What I tell people, if it comes from a tree and you can rip it, you can recycle it when it comes to paper, right? That's a good guidelines that if you're not sure if you can recycle the paper or not, but yes. Okay, next slide. So now we're getting into plastics, ladies and gentlemen. So plastics come in many types. The two plastics that you're going to be using the majority of the times, the stuff that you're going to be buying from the market, are number one plastics, which are called polyethylene terephthalate, which is the picture you see in front of you, or PET bottles. And I'll talk about the other plastics in just a second, but understand that PET bottles are the most popular plastic bottles out there that they use on a consumer level. So water bottles, Coke, Pepsi, whatever your favorite beverage bottle is, usually comes in a PET bottle, okay? Now this image has liquid still in the bottle, but when you're recycling it, make sure it's empty. And as far as the cap goes, We prefer you take the caps off, but if you leave them on, it still gets recycled. It's not a big deal. So on and off doesn't matter, okay? Next slide. So the other type of plastic that can be recycled are number 2 plastics, which are called high density polyethylene or HDPE, okay? Now there's 2 types of number 2 plastics. May sound a bit confusing, okay? So this, what you see in front of you is very recognizable. These are milk containers, 1 gallon or half gallon milk containers. And these are called HDPE natural plastics because of that hazy, opaque look that they have, okay? Next slide. The next type of number 2 plastics you can recycle is called pigmented HDPE, okay? And what that means, it has some type of color. Now, usually they're detergent bottles, shampoo, conditioner bottles, or if you get lotion for your skin or for whatever, those type of bottles. And those are all acceptable. Make sure you use the product that's in them or empty it and then put it in your recycling. Now, the other good guideline to go by when it comes to what you can recycle when it comes to plastic, because there's a lot of plastics out there, ladies and gentlemen. Rolando, if you can press the P button to go previous slide one more time. So I tell people that if you want to know if you can recycle the item that's in your hand, if in most cases, if it's a narrow neck bottle, then it can be recycled. That means if the neck is smaller than the body, then it can be recycled. And in this case, if you look at the neck, it's smaller than the body. Go to the next slide, Rolando. And same thing with this. The neck is smaller than the body, so this can be recycled. And one more slide. And same thing with this. You're also looking at the shampoo conditioner bottles and you're saying, wait a second, it doesn't have a neck. Well, if you unscrew it, it's going to have a neck. Now, the other point that I want to make with plastics, I mentioned that lotion bottles can be recycled, the ones with the pumps. Make sure the pump is thrown away. And the reason for that is it's a composite item. It's made with a bunch of stuff in it. So that gives us problems at the recycling facility. So that's trash, unfortunately. But the majority of the bottle, that's perfectly fine. Empty it out, put it in your recycling. The question I get often is, well, what about cleaning out my bottles? And that's great if you have time to do that. But if you're on the go, just at the very least, make sure it's empty and just put it in the recycling or clean it out if you have time. Cleaning it out is excellent. But I know a lot of people, because they're in a hurry or they don't have a chance to, they'll just put it in there, which is fine, in the recycling bin. The other thing is, it's not just bottles. There's other plastics that also are acceptable. Like, for example, you have, what is it? When you buy strawberries, the clamshell plastics, those are also acceptable. The other plastics that you use on a daily basis that are not, NOT, not acceptable are, for example, number 3 plastics. I talked about 1s and 2s. The third, number 3 plastics are called PVC, polyvinyl chloride. Those are usually credit cards. Okay, those aren't accepted. Number 4 plastics are called low density polyethylene. Those are usually like ice bags or any type of plastic film. That's trash, ladies and gentlemen. Don't put that in the recycling. Unless you have another vendor that can, or another place you can take it, by all means do that. But for your curbside or your commercial recycling program, these items are not accepted. Number 5 plastics are called polypropylene or PP. Those are usually Starbucks cups. If you get a Frappuccino or an iced coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, those items are number 5. Unfortunately, those are not accepted. And again, you can flip it over on the bottom and you'll see the little recycling symbol with the number on it. It'll say what type of plastic it is. And number 6 plastics are polystyrene or styrofoam, as the branded name goes. That stuff isn't accepted. But if you can find a vendor or a place that can accept that material, by all means do that. And number 7 plastics, ladies and gentlemen, are other plastics. They're like a mixture of plastics that are for specific applications. Now, I mentioned there's an 8 and 9 plastic. Those are usually called ABS plastics. And you gotta, please accept my apology. It's a long chemical name that I don't remember what it is, but you can look it up. It's ABS plastics, but those are also for industrial or commercial uses. Next slide. So the other item that's very good for the recycling program in your city is aluminum. Aluminum is one of those things that's great for the environment when it gets recycled. If you ever look up how aluminum is made, it requires a lot of resources. So anytime you can recycle aluminum, it's always good. Next slide. Steel and tin are another material that's very, very good. Your soup cans, your ingredient cans like tomatoes or mushrooms or beans, Goya beans, whatever, as long as it's cleaned out or emptied at the very least, you can leave the label on there. If you open it up on the top, you can leave the top in, just put it in the recycling and it's good to go. Next slide. You also have, what is it? These are called aseptic containers, TerraPaks, Tetra Paks. They come with many names, but these are also acceptable. Make sure they're empty, ladies and gentlemen, and put them in the recycling. You can also crush them to kind of save some space in the recycling so you can fit more in there. Next slide. And glass. So glass is accepted on the residential and commercial recycling programs in Miami Beach. So the 3 colors that you're going to be recycling are clear, green, and brown. You can clearly see that in the picture in front of you. So understand that the glass that's accepted, that's clear, green, and brown, that makes up like 90% of the glass that's out there. There's other colors of glass, you know, certain like liquor bottles that are blue. They're not accepted. If it goes in there, it's not a big deal, but that's generally not accepted. So the other thing I want to mention about glass is keep in mind that the glass is the recycling for glass is geared towards beverage bottle glass containers. So glass like window glass, like the window I have in back of me, those glasses are made from a different type of composition. Those aren't accepted. Or if you have, for example, like glassware, you know, you would buy from a market that the reusable glasses that are at your home that you wash and put in the dishwasher, those aren't accepted. It's mainly for beverage bottle glasses. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're getting into the items you are not going to recycle. And ladies and gentlemen, we get a lot of these items in our coming to our facility, and it slows down the recycling process. And there's a thing called contamination that you may have heard of. This is any material that's not acceptable in the recycling program. We consider that contamination. And you're going to see some of the craziness that people put in. Next slide. So we have plastic bags. This is public enemy number 1, if you will. Plastic bags are like, the way I explain it is that imagine opening up your car hood. You start your car, open up your hood, and you put a bunch of plastic bags in the car engine. It's going to really jam up the engine and slow it down, and eventually it's not going to be good for the engine. Our recycling facility is similar. When we have a bunch of plastic bags that come in, and remember, our facility doesn't do, we don't accept material only from, I'm kind of jumbling my words. Our recycling facility accepts material from all over Miami-Dade, and we get material from Broward County and Collier County, including Monroe and Key West. So we recycle close to, I want to say 800 tons a day, 800 tons with a T. So we get a lot of this contamination at our, that comes into our facility. So plastic bags are the number 1 thing that jam up everything. It gets everywhere. So please, no plastic bags. Take them back to Whole Foods, take them back to Publix, take them back to your grocer. They have a program for that, okay? Or don't use them. That's even, use a reusable bag. That's even the best thing, right? So next slide. And food waste. Look, Ricky's gonna talk about composting. The best thing to do for your food waste is to compost it. This is a natural form of recycling, and she has a great presentation to talk about this, but do not put food waste in your recycling. Okay, if you don't have a composting program, figure out how to start one or throw it away. All right, next slide. Styrofoam. This is another thing we get quite a bit of, like takeout containers. And unfortunately, the food is still in the takeout containers when it comes to our facility. So it gets really disgusting. So no styrofoam containers or polystyrene, I should say, containers in the recycling. Next slide. And we have plastic items. I'm using this chair as an example because everyone recognizes this chair and we get a lot of this. You know, when I ask people, how are you going to recycle a chair in your recycling bin? How are you going to fit it in there? Well, the answer that they give me is, well, I'll crack it with my knee and I'll jam it in there. That's not the answer. These are bulk items. If you can fit it in your garbage, great. If not, put it out for bulk. Or I'm pretty sure Miami Beach has a place you can take bulky items. And Rolando, I'll let you answer that later on afterwards. But yes, no big items like this go in the recycling. Next slide. We also get quite a bit of these pots, these plastic pots that you get from nurseries, from Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. I think there's a way you can just take it back to the nursery. It helps them out, and this stuff doesn't come to the recycling either. So that's a good thing. So yes, next slide. And yard waste, vegetation, branches, grass clippings, you name it. People put all this type of stuff in the recycling. If it can't fit in your garbage, put it out for bulk. Okay. Or if you have a chipper at home, or if you can get it chipped or anything, put it in your composting pile if you have one at home. Next slide. Okay, so these are wrappable items, just like the bags I forgot to mention. They wrap around the equipment, and in many cases, after so much stuff goes through it, the system shuts down because there's some type of jam somewhere, either a bunch of plastic bags or a garden hose like this that's not accepted, that jams up the facility. Then our workers have to actually go in and cut this material out. So please, no wrappable items like this. Next slide. I think there's another item. Yeah, and extension cords are another annoyance that we get as well. Don't put this in there. After Christmas, what do you think we get? Christmas lights, right? People think that, oh, it's still working, put it in the recycling, they'll figure out what to do with it. No, this stuff is trash and it gives us a lot of problems. So no wrappable items like extension cords or Christmas lights. Next slide. And of course, hangers. No wire hangers, all right? Hangers, unfortunately, because they're metal, we had an incident that happened. It wasn't really a hanger, but it was some type of metal strap that it started a fire in one of our other recycling facilities. And I believe it was in Tampa, because some of the machines, they have material, they have parts that go round and round to separate the material. And this piece of metal got caught on the side, and at a very high RPM, metal on metal was rubbing. And eventually it got so much friction that it started a fire. So stuff like this can be hazardous to our employees for safety issues. It's not good to put this stuff in, okay? So contamination can cause fires. Next slide. And we have textiles, clothes. We get a lot of these items, and what I tell people is, look, if you're going to put this in the recycling, at least take it to the Humane Society or some other animal shelter so they can use it for something, right, for the animals, or donate the stuff. We also get a lot of pillows, as odd as it seems for some reason, but and shoes as well. So yes, next slide. Any questions? I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah, so we had a few questions in the chat.
Sure. Go for it. Let's.
Okay. For the plastic bottles, I think you had mentioned this, but bottle caps on or off?
So as I mentioned, it doesn't matter, because in the past we used to tell people leave the caps off because they pop open and they can be as a projectile. That's just not the case anymore. Only because we tightened up our safety on the tipping floor. So no one's really allowed on the tipping floor while the material is being processed. So you can leave the caps on or off, not a problem.
Okay, and then two other items, mayonnaise jar and yogurt tubs.
Okay, so both of those are accepted. The issue with the mayonnaise is just try to make sure, get your money's worth, use all of that mayonnaise. And when you're done with it, if you can, rinse it out. Like I said, rinsing it out is great if you have time to do it. If not, at the very least, make sure it's empty. But yeah, mayonnaise jars, the plastic ones or the glass ones, if they still make the glass ones, they're accepted. And so are the yogurt cups. And I think the yogurt cups are usually a number 2 plastic. What else?
And there was a question about like which numbers for plastic recycling are acceptable.
Right. So I mentioned 1 and 2 plastics. Number 1 are PET, polyethylene terephthalate, which are like water bottles or Coke bottles, 2-liter bottles and such. And the second type is number 2, high density polyethylene, which are usually detergent bottles or milk jugs, half gallon or 1 gallon, or shampoo conditioner bottles. Those are the ones that are accepted, 1 and 2s. Also the clamshells, as I mentioned, for the strawberries and such. Alyssa, you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think we're good for the questions for now.
Got it.
But yeah, if any other questions come up, then we'll be sure to reach out to you to be able to get those answers.
Can I mention one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, well, Rolando, unless you were going to mention it, just want to remind everyone that, you know, the Miami Beach City Ordinance requires businesses to recycle, and that's always a good thing. You know, Miami Beach is a tourist destination, as everyone knows, and they generate a lot of good material that can go in the recycling, and good for the program. So just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that, Shiraz, and for bringing that up. And thank you so much for your presentation. It was amazing, and it's so great to see just pictures and for you to be able to just go off the cuff. It really is a testament to how much knowledge you have about it. But as you were saying, Miami recycling is the law here in Miami Beach, and whether you are a single family home, multifamily home, a commercial property, you do have to have recycling. But beside recycling, we do have a lot of other waste reduction strategies here in Miami Beach. And just to name a few, this is just a few, we have a lot more really. We have our household hazardous waste and paper shred-a-thons that we do. Typically throughout the year, we have about 2 to 4 that we've done. And our last one was on July 10th. And our next one is gonna be September 18th, where during these events, you're able to bring household products such as electronic waste. You can bring batteries, detergent, paint, a lot of these hazardous waste that you can't just simply toss out or recycle. It's really good to bring it over to this event so that it can be properly disposed of. And if you don't have the time to be able to make it to one of these events, we also do have a green waste facility where you can find more information about that on our website. I included 2 links at the bottom, mbrisingabove.com/recycling. And once we get into composting, you'll also be very interested in reaching mbrisingabove.com/compost. The next program that I want to highlight is our Keep MB Clean campaign, which is a campaign where the city is asking everyone to take care of the city because the city will take care of you as well. And we want to make sure that we're reducing the amount of litter that we see around, because litter does end up in our waterways and does affect biodiversity and even ourselves, really. We don't want to see plastic in our waters. It doesn't make it for an enjoyable experience, and Miami Beach is a really beautiful place. Why make it ugly with litter? The next point that I do want to bring up also program is Plastic Free Miami Beach. This is a voluntary program for Miami Beach businesses to sign up and to minimize the amount of plastics that they use. By signing up, they're committing to minimizing their plastic. So we have 3 different levels for Plastic Free Miami Beach. We have level 1, 2, and 3. For a business to reach level 1, they have to minimize and reduce their plastic bag and plastic straw usage. And then to reach level 2, they have to cut those plastics as well as 1 more plastic. And to reach level 3, businesses would have to cut out all the plastics that are a part of the Plastic Free Miami Beach program. As Shiraz was also saying, we do have plastic reduction ordinances in which where the city is minimizing and cutting the amount of styrofoam that we see, the amount of plastic straws, and the amount of plastic stirrers, just to name a few things. We also have our We Heart Biscayne Bay campaign coming up very soon. And this is a campaign where we're engaging with residents and visitors and tourists to help us protect the Biscayne Bay by minimizing the amount of litter that they're putting out, by minimizing the amount of fertilizer and pesticide, which Ricky's going to provide a lot of useful information on how you can do that But also another thing that we do also want to bring up is making sure to clean up after your dog waste, because the dog waste does end up in the waters and it leads to contamination. So the next thing I want to bring up is our composting hubs. The city also does composting, and we have two hubs right now. One of them is at South Beach and the other at North Beach. The first being at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, which Ricky will give you more information about. And then the North Beach Hub is on 85th and Collins toward the left side of the road. And she'll give you also more information on how you can get involved with that. And with that being said, I hand it off now to Ricky to give a little more information about herself and to lead in the presentation.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. So my name is Ricky Bonima. I am a horticulturist. My background is in ecology, and I'm also the in-house beekeeper here at Miami Beach Botanical Garden. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the community compost program that we have here at our garden, and also one that we've started recently with the city of Miami Beach up in North Beach. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can turn food waste by dropping it off at one of the locations into a useful soil amendment called compost. So you can go to the next slide. So at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, our mission is to promote environmental enjoyment, stewardship, and sustainability through education, the arts, and interaction with the natural world. So whereas about a 3-acre botanical garden in the heart of South Beach that is kind of a little oasis from the urban environment. And we like to talk about different programs that people can get involved with at the garden to help increase sustainability through the city. We're going to talk about compost today. And we just like to use those types of practices in our garden more and more with time. And we try to act as leaders in that regard. So we can go to the next slide. And this is just a map. This is South Beach, and the red circle just kind of shows where the garden is located. So we're located, that diagonal street is Dade Boulevard. And then this is a closer up photo. So we share a block with the Holocaust Memorial. And then on the right side, we have the Convention Center. So the red circle on this map shows where our composting hub is located in our garden. So it's located in the southwest corner of the garden. You can enter it if you're coming just to drop off compost. There is a gate that goes straight to the compost hub from 19th Street in that little parking lot while that parking lot exists for now, or you can go through the main gate on the southeast corner to go through a little bit of the garden. It's a prettier route to get there and drop off your food waste there. So you can go to the next slide. So composting is the controlled biological decomposition of organic material in an aerobic environment. So aerobic means with oxygen. There are some larger programs that some waste management programs where they'll take organic waste and they'll use anaerobic, which means without oxygen, and they actually collect the off gases to use as energy. But ours is a very simplistic, natural, outdoor, smaller scale system. So in order to properly process the food waste into compost, you have to have oxygen for the microbes and the organisms that do the processing. They need that oxygen in order to do it. So we started our composting program. Our Compost Hub opened in 2015. It opened to the public in 2016 for residents to start dropping off their waste at the hub. So you can go to the next slide. So why compost? Compost reduces waste. We just had a presentation where he discussed ways to recycle plastic, which is awesome. But one of the big wastes that gets thrown out, I remember in 2018, there was the city summary showed that about 1/3 of all waste by weight was food waste. So it does create a big portion. And when you can't just recycle it, people want to look for another alternative that's more sustainable than just sending it to landfills. And one way is to compost. It provides a living soil amendment that's very healthy for a natural garden. It's much more organic, sustainable. Because there's life in the soil, it provides a lot more benefits to the plants, which provide benefits to wildlife, insects. It's very friendly in that regard. And there have been some studies that have shown that using compost can help reduce the likeliness of pests and also help with the healthier growth of plants in the long run. So we can go to the next slide. A big reason and a big point I want to make is we're always trying to come up ways to reduce waste. A lot in the past, you buy your product, you use your product, and then you just throw it in the garbage and it gets sent to the landfill. It's a very linear system. So we will have our landfills growing and growing and growing. It's a very broken system. What we want to do by composting food waste, which is a really large portion of waste being thrown out, is to close the loop. So instead of a linear where you have an end product that is just seen as waste and not useful, you now are you're buying your product, your food, you're eating your food, and you're throwing your banana peel into the compost, which is being turned into a soil amendment, which you can use to grow more food, use in your plants. It's something useful. You're not throwing anything away. So you're creating more of a circle instead of creating more waste. So we can go to the next slide. Other co-benefits of composting. The finished compost, once it's mature, it has a lot of plant nutrients. It has the big ones like nitrogen, but it also has a lot of micronutrients that are really important. It also reduces the need for synthetic chemical fertilizers, which is really important. We'll talk a little bit more about the ordinance that the city has put in to try and reduce the amount of synthetic fertilizers. It also improves soil structure. It changes the physical structure of the soil, which helps promote more sustainable food production. It helps with root growth. It also increases biodiversity in the soil. Soil is a living organism. It's a whole community of a bunch of different microbes. You have larger organisms. Everyone knows earthworms, little centipedes, beetles. They create a community of organisms in your soil, and having a healthy soil community will help you have a healthier plant community, garden, and wildlife will also benefit from it. Healthy soil also increases the water holding capacity, which is important, specifically in Miami, protecting our waters. By adding compost to our soils, you actually don't have to water as much because the compost will hold water in your soil longer than our sandy soil. There's nothing wrong with our sandy soil, but if you're trying to have a raised bed and you want to grow vegetables, you're gonna need to water very often. And if you add amendments, you have a good soil that has a good amount of organic material by adding compost. You actually don't have to water as often because the compost will hold water in the soil for a longer time. Also, carbon sequestration is very important. Everyone kind of hears about carbon. So one way that compost can help with that is the material, instead of going to the landfill and maybe off-gassing with a lot of methane in the landfill, you're turning it into a soil amendment that contains the carbon, and you're adding it to the soil. And over time, you're building up a carbon sink. And so you're saving carbon from being brought back into the atmosphere. And also the plants are taking up carbon. And so by producing healthy plants, you're also saving, you're also getting that carbon sequestration into the biomass of your plants. So we can go to the next slide. A big benefit that I want to bring up, that it's one of our main things for our program, is community involvement. So there's a lot of businesses, compost facilities that are very large scale. They take a lot of machinery. You kind of just pick them up from businesses and take them and use a lot of different tools and stuff to process the waste into compost. We are a smaller scale. We really want to get the community involved. We have volunteers who come and work and help us turn. By having the community drop off their food waste, they kind of get to see the process. You get to see the facility, how your compost is, or how your food waste is being transformed. We do workshops. We will be setting up more workshops with the city in the future. We also work with the Bass Museum with the STEAM program. So we teach second grade students about soil, and compost is a big thing. Kids get to hold earthworms, get to mix soil using the compost that we produce in our program. They get to come and visit the Compost Hub. A lot of these kids grow up in the urban environment, and so this really gets to open them up to having an experience where they get to see natural environment, see how get their hands dirty really is what's super important with that. So it's provided a really great platform to talk about a lot of really important topics and get kids and the community interested and answer their questions. Next slide. So this is our compost hub at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden. This is an older photo, and I'll show you kind of what it's being transformed into, and like the next slide I want to say. So basically we have bins. So you have your drop off bins. We have compost piles that are actively having food waste added either by volunteers or employees, where temperatures are getting hot, we're turning it, it's got a lot of bacterial activity, and then you let it sit for a longer period of time. So it's curing, it's starting to come down, and then we'll have a pile normally that's maturing, resting, and then being ready to be sifted. And we actually bag our sifted compost, and we have it for sale in our gift shop. We use it throughout our garden. And we have some signage around as well that we've recently updated. Next slide. So in the upper left corner, we have Beata, who is our compost manager at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden. She has been working with us for a couple of years now, and she's done an awesome job. She is transforming from that old system where we have rings. She's starting to move us over into more of a stall system, and it's been going really well so far. We only have the one stall that has 2 piles. So one of the piles is pretty much completely full. In the bottom left, you kind of see the setup, and those little wooden panels come out. And so it's been a lot easier to work the piles. You can take them out, so it changes the height, and we just pretty much shovel from one pile into the other. The old system was kind of a ring system, and so it was a lot to get your pitchfork into the middle, get all the way down. It was a lot of physical energy. So she's done a really good job of kind of making it more efficient. She's also helped me update the signage, and we've also changed out the drop-off bins to be smaller bins, to be more frequently dumped and easier for people to add to. Next slide. So the process, once again, we'll kind of go through it with more of like the new system. So the public comes, the community, you can come, you can drop off your food waste into the small black and yellow bins that are located in the front of the compost hub. And then we add the food waste to the stalls. there's a cooking and turning stage that has a very high bacterial activity stage. You have the curing stage with a high fungal, and then it goes into this sort of resting. And then once it's mature, we sift it and you kind of get to that finished compost that you see there. Next slide. So this really shows the waste transformation. So you have one of our volunteers adding food waste. There's a lot that goes into it. We add mulch to it. At the bottom, you can see them, a couple of people. Sana, our previous head of horticulture who helped start the program, is with another volunteer. So you need oxygen in our system. So we would have volunteers or staff turn the piles. So you need air, you need water, you have Beata watering it. The piles get up and over 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and that kind of sterilizes the compost. And it's a result from the bacterial activity and the respiration. It's actually very impressive. You'll see the piles steaming. And then once it starts to cool down and mature, you'll get a lot of that fungal community coming. And sometimes we see a lot of mushrooms coming out, which is really an amazing thing. And it goes from smelling like food waste, and you'll start to smell that really earthy fungal smell until you get to that finished product. Next slide. So recently, the city of Miami Beach has done an awesome thing and implemented a fertilizer ordinance. The reason why this is so relevant, by adding fertilizer in the wet season. So the ordinance is not to add fertilizer during the wet season between like June and November. We get a lot of rainfall during that time. So if you're adding fertilizer to your lawn or your garden, a lot of it, because we have a naturally sandy soil and we're very close to the groundwater below us and our bay around us, a lot of it just washes through our soil or across our land into a body of water, and it pollutes our waterways. Too much nutrients in our system can lead to a lot of algae growth. The death of our seagrass beds has been a big thing, and it's just the water turns that really ugly green brown instead of our normal beautiful clear water. And so compost provides a much better, more sustainable, healthier alternative to fertilizer. It's adding to the health of the soil, not just the nutrients, all those other added benefits, so that you don't have to add as much synthetic fertilizers. Next slide. So we also have, with the city of Miami Beach, we have a compost hub that we help manage, which is located at 85th and Collins, across from the open space park. And so it's kind of in that northeast corner of a parking lot, and it's in like a gated area. We'll have a photo of it coming up. We have a lot of signage to kind of explain stuff, and we're working on updating some of the signage. It opened up in 2020. And we've had really good results with residents showing up and getting their input. We have had people reach out to us, which has been awesome. Some things that we do accept are fruits and vegetables, tea and coffee, eggshells, pasta, rice and grains, and shredded non-glossy paper. Things that we do not accept are meat, dairy, seafood, plastic or trash, or landscape waste. Another big thing that I want to bring up that we don't, that we've noticed has been very prominent, that makes a big deal. It takes a lot of work, and the compost doesn't process completely right, is a lot of people have brought their food waste in a bag. And a lot of times it's even a compostable bag, which is awesome, but just dumping the food waste out of the bag is great for us. A lot of people just throw the bag in there because you don't really want to smell it. You don't really want to deal with it. But by not opening the bag and dumping the food waste out, you're actually cutting off that amount of that bit of food waste that you're adding in you're not allowing it to process with the compost because no oxygen can get in there. It takes a lot of work. It's not good for us to get our hands in there to open it. And it takes a lot of hours and a lot of labor to go through each of them. So that's something that we definitely really appreciate. And you can sign up online with the city. They have a website to drop off your food waste at the hub. It's open 24/7. Once you email or you go onto the website and you sign up, you'll get a code, and that way you can open the gate to put your food waste into the bins that we have, which you can see here on this photo. This is what the hub looks like. It's got a lot of good signage, and then those bins that are in that gate, once you sign up, you'll get the code to that bin, and you'll be able to drop off your food waste there anytime. And next slide. So yeah, so we use the compost to create the soil that we use in our garden, that we use in our nursery. We have a lot of volunteers help us process the compost, to sift it. We do a lot of workshops with it. We do a lot of things with kids, regular events. Wildlife loves to come anytime we're working with the compost. We always get so many lizards, birds, anything really just coming to look for the bugs that are in it. They're all very beneficial to the whole system. And next slide. So if you're saying that you want to compost, there's some things that you want to consider before you just start doing it. So a lot of people really want to do it themselves at home, which is awesome. My recommendation, if you're first starting out, because there is a community compost program in Miami Beach, is to get involved with the community compost. You'll learn a lot about how the process works, and then you can decide if you think you can do it your own. You'll be more confident knowing that you're doing it right. But then if you decide you want to do it at home, you got to figure out inside or outside. Doing it inside with worms is really fun. I've done that before. Vermicompost is super cool. If you want to compost everything, there's some books that are really great for that you should read first to figure out if it's something that's feasible for you. There's anaerobic options that are smaller scale that you can do at home. But this is kind of a good way to figure out the best way that you can compost with your situation. And next slide. So a garden is a byproduct of its soil, and our soil is a byproduct of our community. So yeah, if we have any questions, thank you very much.
All right, so we have a couple of questions. The first one is, how can someone help out as a volunteer?
Yeah, so we have, if you go, there's a couple of ways of getting in touch with us if you're very interested in volunteering. Some of the signage at the Compost Hubs has an email that you can reach out to. You can always, if you go onto our website, our garden website, there's an email that you can send. You can say you want to get involved, and then we'll reach back out to you. You can always drop by the garden. You can come into the gift shop if you can't figure out how to email, or if just coming in person helps, and say, I'm here and I'm not too busy. I can talk with you for a little bit and figure out a schedule kind of with our compost manager. And hopefully we'll be doing some more workshops regularly at the North Beach Hub also. We're wanting the residents up there to get a little bit more involved now that it's a little bit more established.
All right, and so the last question before we move on is, someone said that they compost with an anaerobic system inside of their apartment, and then after 2 weeks, transfer to a larger vase outside and cover with soil. Are there any additional tips? Do they need to water?
Yeah, so they do an anaerobic system inside, probably like in a bin, and then they add it outside. Yeah, that's fine. You want to make sure if you just have the food waste in that bin, if you're just doing it to fill up the bin until it's full and then send it outside, that's fine. And then covering it with soil. It's gonna change how long it takes. You want to add some, you want to make sure you have a balance of the brown to green. So the food waste to, you need some sort of newspaper, dried leaves, mulch, kind of whatever you have. And so I think that answers that question. Yeah, you got to be careful, especially during the wet season. Like there's other countries and other programs where they'll just bury the compost in the backyard, but you have to remember that you're living in Miami Beach, where as it rains, a lot of those nutrients that are just in the ground, and that's kind of a hot spot for nutrients now. You want to make sure it's covered so the rain isn't getting in there too much, because the nutrients will leach and they will go down into our very vulnerable aquifer. So you want to make sure it's processed correctly before you add it at a more controlled amount in a garden or yard or whatever you're using it for.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to the Kahoot quiz. So if you want to participate, go to kahoot.it and type in the code 9285902.
So the first question is, which of these can be endlessly recycled?
All right, so pretty much everybody got that right. Let's move on to the next question. Why aren't plastic bags recyclable? Great. So yes, they damage plant equipment, they require special recycling processes, and they contaminate other recyclables in your single stream recycling that could be recycled. All right, Juanita, keeping your top spot.
So our next question is, pizza boxes are recyclable. Is this true or false? So that is right. They're not recyclable for the most part. I know it can be a little bit of a tricky question because sometimes people say that the top of the pizza box is recyclable, but typically for the most part, because of the food grease, it is not.
Awesome. Recyclables should not be placed in plastic bags. Awesome. Couple more questions left. How many compost hubs does the Miami Beach Botanical Garden run? All right, so there are two, one at the Miami Beach Botanical Gardens and one at the North Beach Compost Hub.
So this is another true or false. Composting helps increase fertilizer usage and nutrient runoff. Yeah, it seems a little tricky, but composting actually helps to decrease the fertilizer usage and nutrient runoff.
True or false, composting creates a greater sense of community. Awesome, everybody got that right. That's true. And last question.
To participate in the North Beach Compost Program, one must So yeah, the correct answer for this one is registering online. Registration is required to be able to drop off.
So we've included the, oops, sorry, I forgot to show who the leaderboard is. Luciana, Dave, and Composer. You guys are our winners for today. So if you just message us your email, then we can reach out to you with your little goodie.
And to reach out, you can reach out to sustainability@miamibeachfl.gov.
Again, we want to thank you all for joining us today. It was a really fun workshop, and we're excited to have more workshops. If you have any suggestions for any future topics you would like to see, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you again for joining us today. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.